Welcome back. Aatmanirbharta and a call for Swadeshi were the mainstay of Prime Minister Modi's longest Independence Day address at a time when India is facing geopolitical headwinds over trade talks with the US that threaten to impact India's economy. Prime Minister Modi has urged shopkeepers and traders to put up boards outside their shops declaring that they sell only Indian products. Promoting the use of Swadeshi products made in India, the Prime Minister said India should use indigenous goods not out of compulsion but as it's a strength. Have a look at what he said.
हर छोटे मोटे व्यापारी को दुकानदार से आग्रह करना चाहता हूं, आपकी भी जिम्मेवारी है। हम छोटे थे, हमने कभी बाजार में देखा नहीं था कि शुद्ध घी की दुकान, ऐसे ही लिखा जाता था घी की दुकान, लेकिन समय रहते लोग लिखने लगे शुद्ध घी की दुकान। मैं चाहता हूं देश में ऐसे व्यापारी आगे आए, ऐसे दुकानदार आए कि हाँ स्वदेशी माल बिकता है, वो बोर्ड लगा रहे हैं। हम स्वदेशी का गर्व करने लगे। हम स्वदेशी मजबूरी में नहीं, मजबूती के साथ उपयोग करेंगे, मजबूती के लिए उपयोग करेंगे और जरूरत पड़ी तो औरों को मजबूर करने के लिए उपयोग करेंगे। ये हमारी ताकत होनी चाहिए, ये हमारा मंत्र होना चाहिए।
All right, let's talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show to give their perspective is Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, President of the CDPR, also with us, Dr. Sharat Kohli, Senior Economist with us on the program, and last but by no means the least, Sumit Peer, Senior Political Commentator, also joins us on the show. Dr. Kohli, I'll begin with you. First up, what did you make of Prime Minister's push for, the Swadeshi factor? He obviously understands that the only way for India to be Aatmanirbhar and, also sort of mitigate the dependency on the rest of the world is to go vocal for local. But does this have, an added flavor considering the fact that we are at odds with the largest economy in the world today?
Absolutely. Good evening, Vineet. Good evening to my fellow panelists, NewsX viewers, and a very happy Independence Day to all the people who are watching us at this point of time. Yes, it's definitely got a different flavor. And it was just a matter of coincidence, Vineet, that we had the, you get the monthly trade deficit data. And it so happened that the trade deficit in the month of July turned out to be $27 billion, which is very, very high. So I think this is counting on the minds of Prime Minister. He's been speaking about vocal for local for a very long time. We all know that. I mean, vocal for local is not a new slogan which he's given. I mean, he's always been advocating the fact that you should try and use goods which are made in India. But in the present context, as you rightly said, this has got definitely the flavor of Donald Trump in it. And of course, a lot of people are wondering, they were asking me, in fact, a very interesting thing, that we were exporting something to America and America was trying to levy tariff on them. I mean, $86 billion. Out of that, about $50 billion were being impacted by the tariff, the Trump tariffs. So, the question being asked was, and I'm sure a lot of NewsX viewers would like to know, that what has import got to do with export? Well, because when you talk of Swadeshi and when you talk of these shopkeepers putting the signage outside saying that, यहाँ पर देश का बना माल मिलता है, यहाँ पर स्वदेश में बना माल मिलता है, यहाँ पर कोई imported चीज प्रयोग में नहीं लाई जाती, or whatever, So that's the question which comes in the minds of a common man, that if this has got a flavor of Donald Trump, let me be very direct, then what has this got to do with, because there is a direct linkage. Because if we keep importing imported stuff, we keep importing from other countries, then what happens is that the businessmen in India, the factories in India, they don't get opportunity to sell their products in India. Whereas if everybody starts consuming Swadeshi, so all those exporters who are at this moment, I must tell you, Vineet, that I know a lot of exporters in Gujarat and in South India. Of course, I know them in Gurugram and other places also, but these are the two places where we are most impacted because of gems in jewelry and textiles, leather, footwear. They are the ones who are badly impacted because they are negotiating with their customers in America. The margins are very thin. So the customers are saying, I can even, give you verbatim conversation of what happened, that, the margin is only 5%. They say our margin is only 7%. So how will we absorb 50%? Even 25% was becoming difficult. So if these exporters, they find markets in India and they don't have to, obviously exporting is a very good thing. or the Ministry of Commerce is now exporting at least 50 to 60 new markets for these exporters. 90% of our export is not in America, by the way, almost 90%. So if we find them the markets in India, if the Indians start consuming local, and if this Make in India, the whole vocal for local concept gets fully geared up, you will find that the export dependence, import dependence, both comes down. So this is what needs to be understood. It's not just about imports. It's also about export. We can export, which is very good. It brings foreign exchange. But we cannot be landing in a situation where people with vested interest, Prime Minister in his speech very categorically said that there is economic selfishness. Arthik, swarth, uske samne aa raha. That's what he said. So when economic selfishness or vested interest is coming in the picture, when people are thinking of their country first, we should also be thinking of our country first. And that's where Swadeshi comes into play. So I think, yes, you rightly said, the flavor is definitely of the present situation. I mean, I think the whole world is waiting for the great Trump-Putin meeting. I don't have very high hopes from that meeting. But maybe if that meeting goes on and somehow President Putin agrees to what President Trump says without being bullied, then I think you might see the 25% being knocked off. So that is, there's 2 25%. One is the agri and dairy 25%. The other is the Russian oil 25%. So I think it has got a flavor. But I have a feeling, and I would like to reveal a very important fact here, that out of the $100 billion plus of trade deficit we have with China, I think a lot of people don't know that we are not only importing finished goods from China. There is a whole lot of raw material being imported from China. So there is a need for backward integration. We need to start manufacturing that raw material which is coming, because we could be landing in a situation where our forex reserves, for example, at this point is $688 billion. And every time the Reserve Bank of India governor in the monetary policy makes the announcement of the forex reserve, he adds a sentence, and that's where this Prime Minister's statement is linked, that we've got 11 months of enough foreign exchange for the imports. So this is where the catch is. If you remember 1990s, when our gold was pledged, we ran out of foreign exchange, a situation in which Pakistan and Bangladesh perennially remain, they are always in that situation. There is no forex. So this reduces dependence on foreign exchange, reduces dependence on imports, and of course the export is always welcome. We keep getting orders. So in the present situation, but it's better said than done. I think the way ahead is very long. As they say in Hindi, abhi Delhi dur hai, because it will take us a lot of time, we need to be able to make everything by ourselves, because there is a lot of component. There is quality issue, there is cost issue. I think, and Prime Minister spoke about this as well. He spoke about quality, he spoke about price. So I think cost and quality, if the Indian manufacturers are able to overcome these two difficulties, we should not be very far from the vocal for local or the Swadeshi signages which we want outside the markets and shopkeepers.
Ambassador Mukherjee, well, Dr. Kohli is right that it is going to take time. Rome was not built in a day. But I hope we are not late to the party, considering the fact that a lot of our economic hopes were pinned on our association with the United States as well.
Well, Vineet, I don't usually quote The Economist because it's usually very anti-Indian. But in The Economist, in this week's issue, which I'm sure Dr. Kohli must have also seen, on page 8, there's a very interesting article which talks about the new imperial preference. And the concluding 3 lines are very somber. It says that even when President Golf leaves to play more golf, the tariffs will remain, because the American industry will get used to protectionism. They will become uncompetitive in the global market, and they will not allow future politicians to lift those tariffs. In other words, when we used to think that these tariffs are only till Trump becomes a lame duck, when he finishes his term, etc., it would appear that there is a long-term perspective here that we have to deal with, which brings what PM said today into even greater importance, as Dr. Kohli said. And PM said that we will go Swadeshi not because we are weak, but because we are strong. We are not doing it the way we did it earlier when Gandhiji asked us to go Swadeshi when we were under colonial rule. We are doing it now because we want to utilize our vast domestic market of 1.4 billion people to give some much needed relief to those industries which are directly threatened right now, textiles, as he said, gems and jewelry, etc. And for that, one way out, immediate way out, while we are negotiating the new FTAs, for instance, with the EU, etc., etc., while we are busy finding new markets, this going Swadeshi is one way of giving some relief to the Indian exporter of these kind of items, which used to have a big market in the US. In the meantime, as Dr. Kohli said, and after we agreed, we will continue in our quest for new markets, and we will do so without any pause, because now we understand that this 25%, which was on the additional 10%, which is now added to the 25%. So let's say that Yalta 2.0 actually happens today at 1 a.m. Indian time tonight, which I am a little skeptical about, frankly, but it could happen maybe 2-3 days from now. But even if Yalta 2.0 happens, we would still be left with 10% plus 25%, that's 35%. And according to the economists, that's not going to go away anytime soon. So then we definitely need to have this fallback and to have this sign outside, because there are a lot of Indians who just want to buy foreign to show their next door neighbor that they are rich enough to buy foreign goods. It's time for them to take a rethink and to understand that we are confronting a real problem. And if the Indian good is just as good, if not better, please buy it. Please buy it and give our exporters some breathing space while we find them new markets. I think this is really a most practical suggestion, and coming from PM who has huge outreach and speaking from the ramparts of the Red Fort, it has already become the buzzword all over India. Vineet.
Sumit Peer, how do you look at the Prime Minister's remarks? It's obviously commendable, that the only thing that India needs to do at this point in time is look inwards, and that's the simplest solution. And most of these big problems have a very simple solution. I think the Prime Minister has pointed to that.
Vinny, thank you very much for having me on your show. Happy Independence Day to you and all our viewers and all our co-panelists. Look, Vinny, if you look at the Prime Minister Modi's speech, there are a couple of things which are completely different. This was 101% Make in India push. This was 101% Swadeshi push. This was telling and announcing the world it's a matter of time. We'll be independent in everything, Aatmanirbhar in everything. He even for the first time mentioned oil and energy. Usually, Prime Minister does not mention oil and energy. He mentioned those rare earths and minerals. He talked about the nuclear plants. He talked about the hydropower. He talked about the green energy generated. He talked about the solar power. He talked about a lot of things. So if you look at our import list, there are two biggest things on the ticket. One is oil. Second is gold. And he said that 1200 jagah khanan chal raha hai. 1200 places we are trying to find, these rare earths and the metals and the minerals we need. And we are also going deep into the ocean, deep sea exploration to find oil. The message was very clear. Look, dependence is less of independence. And less of independence means that your sovereignty, your economic policy, your foreign policy, and one day your even national security policy may need to be compromised. You could not do Operation Sindoor because if you wanted to get weapons from here and there. So dependence on any country means less of independence. That is what he meant to say in a very nice way. We are not going against the world's norms, because if things are pushed against us, if things are being weaponized against us, we'll do it. Then he mentioned one more line. एक लाइन को हमें छोटा नहीं करना है, but उसके सामने बड़ी लाइन बनानी है. That is, create a bigger infrastructure, create a bigger ecosystem so that we don't have to go what anybody, Donald Trump or anybody thinks, believes or assumes or presumes it is. Let's create our own line, because our economy still works on internal consumption. We are not like China who have to depend on external market to sell and survive. We don't need that. And incidentally, China imports $300 billion of food in a year. $300 billion. That is why he was all praising the Kisans. He said, my Kisan doesn't only provide for me, but we are also able to export. The mission and vision is very simple. From energy, from Operation Sudarshan, from, food, from industrial output, and for energy, from metals, from all kinds and types of dependence what we have from others, we have to get to Make in India. Today it might be Trump, tomorrow it might be somebody else. What if somebody from West, what if somebody from Europe tries to copy a Trump's model? And let's not forget, Vineet, Americans did it in 1930 called the Smoot-Harvey Act. wherein they tried to impose tariffs. You know what happened? In 4 years, they saw the Great Depression because their GDP shrunk by 65%. And what the Bank of America has to say, what Trump is very irritated with them, they said in 4 years, I can't remember the number correctly, it's 42 or $72 trillion will leave America. So America's doomsday cannot be our debacle. The best way is make in India, Aatmanirbhar Bharat, and that is the way to go. And it has to be at an industrial scale, because he mentioned, look, if the farmers of the country would have not done what they did, other we will be even dependent on basic food from foreigners. So if we don't, we took a revolution, like Green Revolution, and it was very clear, farming, dairy, machli palan, and the interests of the small traders will never ever be compromised. Modi दीवार बन के सामने खड़ा है. And it was a very clear message to Trump, because Americans say you compromise on these things. I think the President Trump as an administration got a very, very clear message. We are not even budging an inch. Compromise करना तो दूर की बात है. We're not even budging an inch. Our message is very clear. Will not betray our farmer. Will not betray our fish farmer. Will not betray our dairy producer. Will not betray our MSME sector, and will not betray our chota vyapari, the small businessman. It is very clear. You like it or not, this is what it is going to be. Thanks for pushing at abyss. We're looking for 50 markets. We are going to get Aatmanirbhar. We are going to make everything in next 10 to 20 years. In India, we are not close to international trade, but dependence is compromise of sovereignty. That is a bigger message. And ultimately, if you start compromising sovereignty, one day your Sanskriti will be gone. And if your Sanskriti is gone, there's nothing to be proud about. There's nothing which holds you together. The only thing which holds you together is your Sanskriti, he mentioned at the end. So it's very, very important to hold on to that dharohar of Sanskriti, or the treasure of Sanskriti, to keep the nation together. And Operation Sindoor has been an excellent opportunity. If you're dependent on foreign weapons, good, bad, and gone, there will be nothing left. And even what was important in Operation Sindoor, the enemy did not know what kind and type of weapons are you using. That was also something which really helped us to win this war. And let's say you're depending on XYZ for supplies. How do you know they will supply you? How do you know there will not be a kill switch? How do you know President Trump will not try to impose his conditions on you? Way forward is Aatmanirbhar Bharat. That is why he, appealed to the youth. Why are we dependent on fertilizers from the external world? Why can't we make a jet engine in India? So let's come and make these. A couple of things we need from an operating system. From a social media platform, these all things, from energy. Prime Minister has never been so direct and blunt about talking this. He said, no, it is the mission now. This is what the country needs, because after people are trying to weaponize the trade, we cannot be string ducks. 114 million, 1.4 billion people's destiny cannot be written by somebody playing golf in, Florida. He can't do it. Let it be Trump, or tomorrow somebody, kal koi aur aayega. Somebody might get this idea. And if Americans would have learned their lesson after 1930, Great Depression, they would have learned their lesson. But the problem is, almost after 95 years, the ghost is back. He's exactly doing the same thing. He's calling them tariffs. That time they were called import duties. Exactly. You look at the economists, their GDP will shrink by 6%. Their incomes will fall by 6 to 10%. American average will pay. American will have to pay very high prices. You look at their cost of living is going to go up. Forget the cut in the repo rates. They might go up, but that is their debacle. That is their problem. The way ahead for Bharat is Aatmanirbhar Bharat. And I would like to make one small request to all our people. First thing is, try to buy 99.99% things which is make in Bharat. 100 we can't do. Take a target of 90, go to 99 and 100. Second thing, don't send money out for education, for leisure, for travel, whatever. Jo karna hai yahan karo. And if you have money out of the country, I would request everybody to get that money into the country, because country needs that money right now, because this trade is being weaponized against it. And Vineet, if I can tell you one political statement, do you know why Trump put these tariffs? Said that these Trump tariffs were put under a nefarious design. The design was to break and put into the grey make in India. Why didn't he put tariffs on China? China is the biggest importer of Russian oil. No 25% tariff on that. No BRICS tariff on that. In fact, he told China 90 days is no problem. You carry on what you are craving. You wanted to break make in India. You wanted to break the back of the economy, this MSME sector, because you are manufacturing and your lobbyists told you to do so. That is what Trump was doing beneath. Basically, this tariff का सारा बहाना है, make in India पे निशाना है, and by the virtue of that, you want to destabilize the Modi Sarkar, and all these political dramas which you see and which we discuss on other debates we need every day. Just try to put everything in a piece, and you are the best friend of Pakistan and you are best friend of China. How does this sum up? World's oldest democracy getting in a slugfest with a world's largest democracy trying to impose your terms and conditions on us, trying to kind of determine the fate of 1.4 billion people. Is this hypocrisy Why not tariffs on China?
Let me also get up a word in from Dr. Bhattacharya on this issue that you have raised. Sir, your response on what has been said by the panelist and the new India that we need to create from within.
Yeah, let's look at what is the core of the problem is that India stands to lose about $50 billion of exports to US because of the Trump tariffs. And if we compromise on that, and then we compromise on everything that the Prime Minister talked about, which is throwing our MSMEs and farmers and the vulnerable classes under the bus, which this country refuses to do. In addition, we also have $100 billion of trade deficit with China, which is huge, which is a humongous trade deficit. So if we want to, let's say, find out alternate ways of making sales to compensate for the loss of this $50 billion that we are selling to US, we need to find other markets. Now, China is not the other market. It's very clear. It is already weaponized trade. Russia is not too big a market. Europe has put up massive walls. They have started putting anti-dumping duties against Indian producers. So where do we find this market? That market has to be found internally. And when it finds a market internally, it also has to displace imported goods. Now, much of the imported products that you see can easily be made in India, maybe a few rupees more. And those products are being sold largely from China at a few rupees less, subsidized by their government. The pricing has been weaponized and we are not able to do much about it. Now, a very simple question that people keep asking is that why can't the government ban the imports of these goods? Now, we cannot do that because we are a signatory to the WTO. We simply cannot go and ban it. Under WTO, there are three mechanisms given, largely, which is the anti-dumping duties, the quality control orders, and the quantitative restrictions. Now, those are being applied, but those are very timely, they're very time-consuming procedures, and therefore the government just cannot stop it. If you notice, the Prime Minister's voice had a sense of urgency in it. He wanted to have the people respond, because unless the people reject, the government, unfortunately, because of agreements already signed, cannot stop these imports from coming in. So unless we displace the imports coming in, which are not sophisticated imports, which are very simple imports, which can easily be built within this country, we will not be able to find market for our products, which are now getting displaced from other markets. In addition, there was an important point that both Mr. Sumit Peer and Dr. Kohli mentioned, which is about supply chain resilience. Time and again, China is using it as a threat against India. They have used it as a threat against US, which is one of the reasons why US is not able to do much against China. We do not have such a leverage. We are not core in supplying anything that's going to impact a large industry. When China stopped the supply of rare earth magnets, it brought the US automobile industry to its knees. It also impacted Indian automobile industry, including two-wheelers, including EVs, and so on and so forth. But if you look at India, except for barytes and guar gum and so on, we do not really have much that we can use as a leverage in supply chain. And therefore, it is very critical, as both Sumit Peer and Dr. Sharad Kohli mentioned, that we need to have our own supply chains. We need to find right from the minerals to the processing, to the sub-assemblies, subsystems, and the final products. And that's where the Prime Minister's message was directly to the citizens. Please actively avoid imported goods. It's going to compromise our sovereignty. There was no other words that one could say, because that would go against the WTO principles. We need to create the market here for our products. And because we've got a large market, we'll have the economy of scale to be able to reduce the cost of our products and then unleash those same products to the rest of the world. So that was a sum and substance from an economic perspective of what the Prime Minister said today.
Vineet, can I make one small point?
All right, quickly, Sumit, we have run out of time.
It's around $80 billion, $85 billion. The things which are exempted are the ones which are suited for Americans, like the pharmaceuticals and all. And the things which are put on this tariff are exactly the ones which come from small industry, which have come up in Make in India, which have come in Make Vocal for Local and local to global. All these initiatives, all the things which have come under that initiative in last 10, 11 years, they are exactly tariffed. So the question here is, are you targeting Make in India? If you are doing that, then be direct and talk about it. Because you want to scuttle and break our farmer, our MSME, our chota vyapari, our dairy farmer and our machli palak. If that is the agenda to bring a political turmoil in India, well, then you have failed.
All right, fair enough. On that note, we take a short break. Appreciate everybody who joined us on the program.